The Pope in Fatima. The Holy Father arrives in the Catholic shrine town to celebrate one of the most important events in recent church history. Comey controversy, more outrage over President Trump's decision to fire the FBI director, and reaction from the commander-in-chief. Worldwide threats. A congressional hearing digs into the security of the country and the world. And persecuted Christians.
No, that's our home. We belong there because that's our home.
We speak to Cardinal Wuerl from the Archdiocese of Washington about the Middle East's ancient Christian communities on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, May 12, 2017. Pope Francis makes a big impression in Portugal just hours into his visit to Fatima. He's joining hundreds of thousands of pilgrims for the 100th anniversary of the apparitions. Good evening and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. Pope Francis receives the red carpet treatment during his arrival in Portugal, including a warm welcome at the airport. From there, the Holy Father used a golf cart to travel a short distance to the air base's tiny chapel. That's where he was greeted by a group of children and people with special needs. Pope Francis hugged and kissed several of the kids before continuing his trip. The Pope is flanked by a huge security presence. Around 3,000 police officers are protecting the pontiff and controlling crowds. His presence drew a huge group of pilgrims to Fatima's vast square. The rain that poured down earlier in the day gave way to a brilliant, warm sun by the time Francis arrived. After passing through the crowds, the Holy Father went directly to the statue dedicated to Our Lady of Fatima. The Pope plans to honor the shepherd children who had visions of the Virgin Mary in Fatima 100 years ago.
Que o Pai revela aos pequeninos.
The Pope's remarks are being translated for broadcast around the world. Alan Holdren is the Rome Bureau Chief for Catholic News Agency. He joins us from Fatima, Portugal. Alan, what has been the reaction to the Holy Father's arrival there in Fatima?
Well, Wyatt, here in the square, just right outside the Basilica of Our Lady of Fatima, this beautiful reaction came first when the Pope flew over in the helicopter, just came right up over our heads here, and the crowd just erupted in applause. It was this beautiful moment of intimacy, really, of all of these hundreds of thousands of people with the Pope. And then when he came in the Pope-mobile, you just feel the love. I mean, this is a place of peace, of silence. We had chaos for a moment because there was a lot of noise here. You couldn't even hear your own voice. And then we had moments of silence where the Pope was praying. This incredible connection between the Pope and the crowd, just really beautiful here in Fatima.
Well, Alan, as you know, the Holy Father is hoping the message of peace that the shepherd children shared with the world 100 years ago will resonate today. Remind us, what was Our Lady's message to those shepherd children?
Well, when Our Lady appeared, it was exactly 100 years ago, in 1917, and it was just here behind me that she appeared to 3 small children 6 times over the course of the year. Her message to them was a secret for the longest time, and there were 3 main themes. People called them apocalyptic. She warned the world against the atheist regimes that would rise and fall. She foreshadowed the coming of World War II if people didn't turn away from sin. She gave the children a vision of hell. And she also told them about the death of a pope. All of those were spot on, except the Pope didn't actually die. He was shot in St. Peter's Square. And the children carried this message to the popes first, and the popes brought those to the world.
Well, many Catholics may remember that St. John Paul II had a special connection to Fatima. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, John Paul II was actually shot on the feast of Our Lady of Fatima in 1981. He said afterwards that it was Our Lady who directed the bullet in a way that he wouldn't actually die from that assassination attempt. And it was such a strong devotion that he had that it was just 1 year later that he came here to Fatima for the first of 3 trips that he would make during his pontificate. We see also this strong devotion carried out in Francis's work. Every time he goes on one of these trips, just like he did last night, he goes to see Our Lady there in Rome to pray at an icon. And we saw that strong devotion again here tonight in the footsteps of John Paul II, when the Pope Francis prayed in front of the statue of Our Lady on the site where she appeared to those shepherd children, 2 of whom will be canonized by Pope Francis tomorrow.
It's nice to see the crowd building there at that pilgrimage site. Alan Holdren, Catholic News Agency, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you, Wyatt.
We have more Fatima coverage coming up, including a look at all the pilgrims gathering for this momentous occasion. We're learning more about President Trump's trip to the Vatican. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster says the president is honored to have an audience with Pope Francis.
He looks forward to paying his respects and to discussing religious freedom, ways to combat religious persecution, human trafficking, and cooperating on humanitarian missions across the globe.
The Holy Father and the President will meet on May 24th as part of Trump's first foreign trip as president. McMaster says this will be the first time a U.S. president has ever visited the homelands and the holy sites of the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faiths all in one trip. President Trump lashes out on Twitter amid a firestorm over the abrupt firing of FBI Director James Comey. He's questioning whether his administration should cancel White House press briefings and replace them with written responses after concerns over the accuracy of those briefings. Jason Calvi reports now from the North Lawn. Jason?
Wyatt, Press Secretary Sean Spicer says he and his staff do their best to provide correct information. This week, the president's advisor said Trump fired the FBI director on the recommendation of the Deputy Attorney General. The president contradicted those statements yesterday, but his supporters still praised the decision.
These are people who voted for Donald Trump to go and drain the swamp. And so the firing of James Comey is actually just exactly what they wanted. This is what they expected. This is what they voted for. I think the timing is an issue that is more a media-driven issue, more of a Washington issue. It's not a Wichita issue. It's not a Phoenix issue. They see it as just another, quote, media witch hunt.
And yesterday, during the acting FBI director's testimony, he contradicted some of the White House statements. He said Director Comey did indeed have broad support among FBI staff, but the media also got some of their story wrong, as conservative website The Federalist tells us.
Coverage of this has been completely dominated by stories from anonymous sources that have been proven to be either completely wrong or half-truths and things like that. So I think it's important to keep all of that in mind when we look at what's happening. A story completely reliant on anonymous sources with no one talking and no other evidence is something I would be skeptical of when reading.
When asked about another presidential tweet today, Press Secretary Sean Spicer says the president has nothing more to add. President Trump tweeted that fired FBI Director James Comey had better hope there are no tapes of their private conversations, an ominous warning here at the White House. And a person close to Comey tells the Associated Press that Trump asked him to pledge his loyalty, but Comey declined. In some late-breaking news, Senator Chuck Schumer's spokesman confirms that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will brief the full Senate about the Comey firing next week. Wyatt?
Jason, how are lawmakers responding to the president's tweets?
Well, the number 2 Senate Democrat, Dick Durbin, says the president's credibility has been destroyed.
Jason Calvi reporting from the White House. Thanks, Jason. England says a cyber attack that has crippled some UK hospitals is part of a wider international attack. Britain's National Health Service says hospitals across the country were targeted. The investigation is in its early stages, but there's no evidence patient data was compromised. The breach did force hospitals to cancel some medical procedures and appointments. In Spain, several companies were impacted by an attack, but no details were released about its origin. Cyber attacks are also a threat to the United States, according to U.S. intelligence leaders. Several agency directors testified on Capitol Hill this week. Tonight, we take a look at all the potential problems they're flagging. The Director of National Intelligence says cyber threats represent a critical national security issue.
Our adversaries are becoming bolder, more capable, and more adept at using cyberspace to threaten our interest.
Dan Coates says the list of adversaries is growing as criminal organizations and terrorist groups develop cyber capabilities, and technology is integrated into American infrastructure. Coates' remarks came on the same day that President Trump signed an executive order aimed at strengthening American cybersecurity. Another major threat to the U.S., North Korea and its leader, Kim Jong-un.
North Korea has declared its intent. It said it publicly. It produces propaganda images that shows their intent to develop intercontinental missiles, nuclear armed.
Mike Pompeo, director of the CIA, which handles foreign intelligence, says partnering with China will help the U.S. fend off threats from North Korea.
With respect to the Chinese, they have made efforts in a way that they have not made before in an effort to close down the trade that they have and putting pressure, diplomatic pressure as well, on the North Koreans.
Tough talk from Attorney General Jeff Sessions to federal prosecutors nationwide. He's calling on them to charge suspects with the most serious offenses they can prove.
And I trust our prosecutors in the field to make good judgments. They deserve to be unhandcuffed and not micromanaged from Washington.
The Attorney General's directive reverses Obama-era policies. The move was quickly condemned by civil rights groups. They argue the new guidelines will lead to overpopulated prisons. A powerful bomb targets a Pakistani politician, killing 25 and injuring more than 30 others. The attack happened in the town of Mastung in the southwest region of the country. ISIS claims responsibility. The deputy leader of the Pakistani Senate was wounded but is in stable condition. He says he doesn't know why ISIS is targeting him. There's an outpouring of support around Indonesia following the imprisonment of a Christian politician. People are holding nightly vigils for the governor of Jakarta, known as Ahok. He was found guilty of blasphemy against Islam and sentenced to 2 years in prison. His lawyers plan to appeal. The U.S. State Department has also criticized the sentence. Cardinal Wuerl speaks at the World Summit in defense of persecuted Christians. The Billy Graham Evangelistic Association hosted the first of its kind event here in Washington. Joining us now is Cardinal Wuerl. Your Eminence, in your speech today, you say there are 2 reasons why Christians are persecuted. 1, there are those who persecute them, and 2, there are those who remain silent. How do we raise our voices? How do we get the world's attention?
I think we have to find every opportunity, as you're doing right now, being present to something like this conference, but also we want to get all of our Catholic faithful. We'd like to have all of Christians around the world, but our Catholic faithful to realize what's going on, and that's the starting point, to be aware of the horror, the extent of this persecution, and then begin simply to speak about it with their neighbors, to speak about it with friends, and when they have an opportunity to send an email to a political representative to say, why are we not lifting this up, and why are we not aware of it, and why are we not doing something about it? So the first step is making people aware, helping them understand just how widespread is this persecution.
And we can tell it's a very active conference there in getting the message out. This week, Vice President Pence thanked you and a number of church leaders by name for advocating for persecuted Christians. What are the American bishops doing to get aid to Christians, especially in Iraq and Syria?
One of the great blessings of our Catholic Church is that we have had Catholic relief services in place for so many decades. And it's on the ground in all of these places around the world where there is this suffering, this need for some physical assistance, things as simple as water, food, blankets. So the Conference of Bishops of the United States continues to support all the work of Catholic Relief Services in this outreach around the world. I think that's our primary physical contribution. But the conference also is doing what it can to raise the moral awareness, to raise the awareness across our country of what's happening. And I think our conference is doing a very good job.
You also challenge the West not to forget about Christian persecution, especially in the Middle East, the birthplace of Christianity. Why is it important that Christians stay in the Middle East?
The Christians, we have been there from the very, very beginning. In fact, it was at Antioch where the Christians were first called Christians, the followers of Jesus. But in Jerusalem, in Damascus, in Antioch, all over this part of the world, Syria, Iraq, the church is ancient there, and we need to stay. We're a part of that civilization, we're a part of that culture, we're a part of that region. We should not be forced out just because there are other political forces today that would prefer to see us go. No, that's our home. We belong there because that's our home.
Very important message on a very important conference in a day like this. Cardinal Donald Wuerl, Archbishop of Washington, thanks so much for talking with us.
You're very welcome. God bless you.
Coming up, changes at the VA, how the Trump administration is trying to improve accountability. And we have continuing coverage of the Pope's trip to Fatima. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. The Department of Veterans Affairs wants to hold VA employees accountable. The Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs introduced a bill this week allowing the VA Secretary to dismiss bad employees faster and protect whistleblowers. Joining us now is Sean Riley, Senior Policy Analyst at Concerned Veterans for America. Sean, this bill comes in response to the scandal at the VA Medical Center in 2014. As many as 40 veterans died while waiting for medical care. Do you think this bill goes far enough to address the problem?
Yeah, so in the wake of that scandal, there was a bill that was passed that addressed some of the problems. But I think what we've seen since then is that that bill did not go far enough. And so we have advocated over the last couple of years for another bill that would address some of the problems that continue. This bill, I think, does go far enough. The bill, there was a bill that came over from the House that was deemed, or that was a bit controversial. The Senate has since worked within itself to come up with a compromise bill. It was actually introduced yesterday. And that bill will be going through the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. And that bill we're supportive of.
What's your assessment of morale right now among veterans?
I think a lot of veterans are frustrated. I think they have been promised certain things that they feel like they are not receiving. They feel like there's a lot of broken promises. They feel like they have put their lives on the line in many cases to serve this country, and that those promises aren't being kept.
Well, David Shulkin, the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, testified yesterday before a Senate subcommittee. In your opinion, what do veterans really need most from the VA?
Well, I think what they need is they need flexibility. They need to be able to. They need to be given choice, and they need timely care. They need care when they need it. We see there's been a rash of suicide. Veteran suicide has been an issue. Part of that is because veterans are unable to get in and get the care that they need, the mental health care that they need in a timely manner. And then we see all these other instances where, whether it's physical or mental, where veterans really are not being served. And so I think the things that veterans need is a system, and that they deserve, is a system that serves them.
Well, when you talk about that system, Shulkin has talked about this idea of making the VA program more like a private sector operation. Do you think that would be a good idea? Would that help at all?
Well, so there are a couple different proposals out there, ideas about this. Some people just say we should just voucher the whole thing and get rid of the whole brick and mortar system. We don't actually think that that's the right way to go, but what we do think is that we need a system that is centered on the veteran, and give the veteran the choice to go where he or she feels they are best cared for, or whether it's what's more convenient. Some veterans live in very remote areas where there's not a VA facility nearby. And so when they're kept in that system and not given a choice, it makes it very difficult for them to kind of get the care that they need in a timely manner, in a way that's convenient.
It has been so difficult for so many military members over the years, and it does seem to be choice seems to be the big thing that everybody seems to be advocating for. Sure. Sean Riley, Senior Policy Analyst at Concerned Veterans for America. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Margaret Collin is an American actress seen in films like Independence Day and TV shows like Gossip Girl. She's also pro-life and Catholic. Collin sits down with EWTN ProLife Weekly host Catherine Zeltner about being a feminist and how that goes hand in hand with being pro-life.
It was the early tenements of the American feminist movement to be pro-child. It was Elizabeth Cady Stanton in the Revolution, and the other early American feminists were all pro-life. They never would consider separating a woman from the life of her child.
She also talked to Catherine about being an actress with pro-life views. You can see the entire interview tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern and again Sunday at 10 a.m. on EWTN ProLife Weekly. Up next, thousands of pilgrims join Pope Francis in Fatima. We'll take you back to the 100th anniversary celebration. Pope Francis is urging Catholics to tear down all walls and spread peace and justice. The Holy Father is in Fatima, Portugal, to mark the anniversary of the apparitions of the Virgin Mary to 3 shepherd children. The Pope will declare 2 of those children saints tomorrow. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. We're hearing from the pilgrims in Fatima who are bringing many intentions with them.
A cerimônia, né? A vinda do Papa. Vim para fortificar mais a fé.
And Annabella from Mozambique, who just got married, says she came to pray for a strong marriage. For days now, church groups, families, and individuals have made their way to the town, some on their knees in prayer. Organizers say they expect 1 million pilgrims. Dr. Matthew Bunson, EWTN senior contributor and senior editor with National Catholic Register, joins us now. Matthew, Pope Francis talks about being a pilgrim of peace and hope. How did he kind of convey that message today?
Yeah, well, in this vigil, he came straight to the Chapel of the Apparitions, and his message in this vigil tonight, the opening prayer, was, as you said, he's a pilgrim, like the millions of other pilgrims.
Not just a trip, right?
Not just a trip, yeah. He's a pilgrim of peace. He's a pilgrim of hope, but he's also a pilgrim of the light, he said, that comes from the Blessed Mother. And he added, as you noted in the lead-in here, that he talked about we have to tear down the walls. And he added this in the prayer that was sort of beautifully nested in a version of the Salve Regina that we heard today. We have to tear down the walls. We have to go out to the peripheries. And then he hit on one of his great concerns, and that is warfare everywhere around the world. He talked about the spilling of blood. And then at the very end of that prayer, what did he do? He came back to Our Lady being a refuge for sinners, taking us back to the key conversion, the theme of hope and prayer and conversion for sinners.
It's a very powerful message. The Shrine of Fatima has received 2 golden roses, going to receive a 3rd this weekend. What is a golden rose? Explain that.
Yeah, well, today we watched Pope Francis bring that golden rose to Fatima. It's the 3rd. The first was under Pope Paul VI. It was one of the first popes ever to go to Fatima. Then, of course, we had Pope Benedict XVI in 2010. Pope Francis is bringing his. The golden rose is a rare papal honor. It's usually in history been given to monarchs and heads of crowns, and also even to cities that have done great work for the church. In the modern era, most of the golden roses have gone to Marian shrines. Pope Francis has given one, in fact, already to Our Lady of Czestochowa and one to Our Lady of Guadalupe. For Francis, though, the golden rose is not only a great honor to honor Mary, it's also a symbol for him of penance. And we go back to Paul VI's letter to Fatima. On the key of penance is a rose symbolizing that healing of the sinner.
It's so interesting to hear how he's following the footsteps of his predecessors in that sense. There's, like I said, there's not, like, if there's not enough going on today, what can we expect tomorrow?
Yeah, well, tomorrow there are 2 things we got to look for. First is the rite of canonization, when Francisco and Jacinta Marto are declared new saints. We'll have the litany of saints, and then we'll have the petitions and the requests of the Holy Father to canonize them. And then we'll have, of course, the Mass, everything centered on the Eucharist. Pay close attention to Francis's homily tomorrow. I think he's going to pick up on a lot of the themes that we heard in the prayer today, about the peripheries, about peace in the world, that fundamental message of conversion from Our Lady, and, of course, the power of the Rosary.
It is pretty powerful and pretty impactful for so many people who are coming there. Matthew Bunson, thanks so much. We appreciate your contributing. And, of course, if you want to watch, you can check it all out right here on EWTN tomorrow. We thank you so much for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll see you back here on Monday. Good night, and God bless.